Hi, I'm Sheila Layton. Welcome to the Beyond Coincidence Show, where every moment holds a miracle and we talk about seeing the hand of God in our lives. Call it a God wink or a tender mercy or whatever you want. Everyone on this show has seen the hand of God or their higher power in their lives in a very real and personal way. Welcome, everyone. I have a really amazing guest with me today. Her name is Portia Louder. And she spent 5 years in federal prison and found out how valuable she is to our Father in heaven while she was there. She shares, you can do really hard things when you know who you are. Portia has authored 2 books titled Living Louder, A Compassionate Journey Through Federal Prison, and recently Born to be Brave, A Compassionate Journey Through Life. She teaches lessons about love, passion, and belonging. She's a writer, a speaker, photographer, advocate, and she mentors at-risk youth and people who are struggling with addiction. Portia and her husband, Chad, live in Saratoga Springs, Utah, and she enjoys the simple things in life with her children and grandchildren. So welcome, Portia. I'm so excited to meet you today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Yeah, it's super fun. I found you on Instagram, I don't know, maybe a year ago or less, and just kind of been chatting back and forth. And so I really appreciate you taking time out of your day to chat with me today. So Portia, tell me, what does life look like today? How long have you been out of prison and what keeps you busy day to day?
Yeah, so I have been out of prison for 6 years. I am probably busier than I want to be, and I'm trying to navigate all that. The last year I work for 2 companies. I have a job as a life recovery coach for both, actually. One of them, we created a program that helps people when they come out of prison kind of reintegrate back into society and gives them the resources. And that's grown really fast. I also facilitate youth groups, kids that struggle with mental health and addiction. And then I do individual coaching sessions for a company virtually. And I also work with the homeless. So I'm super busy.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I also have my own children and grandchildren. All of my children now, my youngest child will be 18 in September.
Oh, wow.
So all of my kids are older. I have 3 grandchildren and life is busy. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. That is so great. So you and Chad, you have a blended family?
So kind of. I had 2 children when I married Chad. I did not have my children had different fathers. Their fathers were not in their life, and I didn't receive any child support. And at that point, I had placed a child for adoption. So I've been through a lot. It's interesting because Chad and I were talking last night, and he said, I met you for the first time when you were 8.5 months pregnant with the child that I placed for adoption. So I literally had 2 children as a single mother and going through one of the hardest experiences of my life up to that point. And he goes, that's the power of God. Like there's no way, because Chad had just graduated college. He knew my sister. They went to college together, and he came to see my sister and her friend, and they were all, and there I am, like in such a hard place. And then, later, after going through a bunch of other hard things, we reconnected and ended up getting married. And when we got married, Chad adopted my 2 children, and so he's their father.
Yeah, for
The
sure.
father that they've known, but Chad had never been married and he hadn't had kids. So I don't know if I'd call it blended, because it's like there's a lot of space. When Chad and I had our first child together, there were 8 years, and he kind of got thrown into being a father,
Right away. Yeah.
right away.
Yeah, no, I guess blended means he had some and you had some. So, but really, he's their dad. And so the
Yeah.
2 of you had how many children together?
So I had 2 when we got married, then we had 3 together. So we have
Okay.
5. Yes.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, Portia, tell me, let's go back and talk about what life was like growing up, because I know that your growing up years were pretty rough, and that shaped who you are in many ways. So I'll just let you sort of start. How many kids? Where did you fit in? Did religion play a part at all? And you can share as much as you'd like to share.
Yeah. So I am the oldest of 7 children, and my parents were members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. They had both had their hard things. My mom's mother passed away when she was a teenager, and her life had been pretty chaotic. And my father's dad was an alcoholic. He didn't know him, but they were both members. They'd kind of been inactive. They got married, and then they started this family. My dad was a Vietnam vet with all kinds of PTSD. And my mother was this super hippie that didn't believe in any rules or boundaries. And so it was a little bit chaotic as growing up. We grew up out in the country, and as the oldest of 7 kids, like having another kid about every 18 months, it was really chaotic. A lot of fun. I remember playing outside and doing fun things. We didn't read scriptures as a family and do the things that a lot of people in the LDS church do. And my mom was such an out of the box thinker. Like they kind of, it's hard to be not a rule follower and be a member of the church.
Especially back then, right?
Right.
I mean, because things were much more black and white 50 years ago
Right.
than they are now, right? So would have been rough for her.
It was, and there were lots of things. Like my mom is a very loving and compassionate person, and I love that about her. But I really started to struggle. I have a strong personality, more like my dad. And by the time I was 13 years old, I told my parents I was done going to church. I didn't feel like I fit in there. I wasn't comfortable. I didn't have a testimony. And I thought, why do I even want to be here? And in our home, you kind of did what you wanted to do. So at 13, I was done with church. And then that's also when I decided that what boys thought of me was the most important thing.
That's kind of, normal. You kind of want boys to think you're cute. And so did your family continue to go even though you didn't go? Did they go?
They did. My parents continued. Then they went inactive later, but at that point they went. It wasn't just me thinking what boys thought of me was cute. At 13, I literally started dating 16-year-old boys who were driving, and it didn't matter what my parents said. I was going to do what I wanted to do. My dad would say no, and I would sneak out the window and go anyway, So I was pretty defiant. It led to some difficult teenage years for me and my parents, honestly, because imagine having this oldest child that's so rebellious, doing exactly what she wants to do. And then they have these other kids that are following suit. And also they're just really busy. My dad had to financially support a family like that. He had a regular job and he had side jobs, and we lived in the country. So there were animals to take care of. And my mom just always had another baby to take care of. So I think by the time I was 16, I was like pretty much moved in with a friend and said, I'm done being there. That was hard for my parents. And then I got pregnant for the first time when I was 17, moved into low income apartments and thought, okay, I'm ready to start my life. Like I felt like I was an adult, even though I had no idea what I was going to do. I'm like,
did you graduate high school or no?
I dropped out of high school. I did end up going back and getting my GED.
Yeah. So, but at the time you dropped out and were working and then had a baby and
yeah. So and I guess I just thought I didn't see a future for myself other than having kids. Like I wasn't good in school. Looking back, I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't have any confidence. Like I didn't have a job. I didn't have things that would have made me feel good about myself. I went to school 1 or 2 days a week. I mean, because I didn't have to if I didn't want.
Right.
Like in our home, there was kind of that. And so it wasn't like I had anything to build on. And I just got pregnant and I kind of was glad. I was like, great, I guess I'm going to have a baby now. The relationship didn't work out, when you're that young. And so I was then a single mother living in low income housing with my son. And I just remember
on government assistance because you probably didn't have a job, right?
That's why I got the GED, was because welfare said I had to.
Well, that's good, I guess.
So that's one thing. Yeah.
So was God any part of your life at that point, or did you have any relationship with God at all?
No, I wasn't interested in that. And I definitely think that the LDS religion, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, I did not feel like I fit in there. And I wasn't looking for religion anywhere else. I remember thinking, I wish I kind of did, but I just don't. I'm a mistake person. Like I don't fit in. And so what I thought I had to do is just get married. I kept thinking, well, geez, if I just get married, I'll be okay, So
but you were 17, whatever, right?
Yeah, why not? I met a guy who was 28. I was 18 at this point, and he told me, he said, Portia, you should marry me because I can take care of you. That was his offer. And that's what I was looking for. I said, let's do it. Like it seemed like a good offer to me, Right. So we got married. We had known each other about a month. And
oh, wow.
Yeah, it was quick. Wasn't going great. And about that time, my dad got transferred to Salt Lake City because I lived in a very small town in southern Utah. So just to give you an idea, my parents moved with my siblings to Salt Lake for work. I had never been to Salt Lake. Like it was it was weird. I drove up to visit my parents and I was blown away that there was like this whole city that wasn't where I lived. And I thought, I'll go up here and get a job, man. There's something else for me, When I went back and told my husband, he said, well, we don't even get along and I'm never leaving this town. So why don't you just go live with your parents and get a job then? You will get divorced. So our commitment was about as solid as our commitment. I mean, we just got a divorce. It took about a week and I moved to Salt Lake with my parents.
So you were married for what, like less than a year?
Yeah. And then I found out I was pregnant with my daughter as soon as I got to Salt Lake.
So. Oh, from that marriage?
Yes.
And you're like, oh, dang.
I was pretty sad actually, because I kind of regretted that I had left him. I called him back and said, maybe we should work it out, because also I had a son who knew him as a father, even though it wasn't his father, he knew him. And I said, maybe we should work it out. And he said, yeah, we don't even get along, and I really don't want to be a part of your life. I've been dating somebody else. And I just remember feeling alone, my dad knew that I was stubborn, so he wasn't going to tell me what to do. But he said, Portia, you might want to consider reading the Book of Mormon.
So
and
did you move home with being
I lived
pregnant?
with my parents. Yeah, I was living with my parents. And so I have this 3-year-old son, and I'm pregnant. And my dad said, maybe try reading the Book of Mormon. Well, I knew my dad read the Book of Mormon. I mean, we didn't read it as a family, but I knew my dad read it. And I actually really respect my dad, but I didn't tell him I was going to read it. I just at night started reading the Book of Mormon in my room with my son. I remember feeling comforted. I didn't really understand it that well, but I felt some comfort. I wasn't going to church or anything. And when my daughter was born, my dad said, Portia, why don't you let me bless her? I remember being at the hospital with my mom when I had her, and I thought, this shouldn't be like this. Like, I want to have a baby with someone someday. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's there for me. Yeah.
Yeah. And so my dad asked if he could bless my daughter, and I said yes. So I went to church with my parents, and I looked around, and everybody seemed really happy at church, and they were all married. And I thought, oh, good. I just need to get married, and I'll be just like they are. Everything will be fine.
Right.
I started dating again, and I ended up getting pregnant again. So I was 23 now. I have 2 young children. Couldn't have, I didn't get child support or anything, and their fathers weren't in their lives. I remember saying my first real prayer, which was just, Heavenly Father, I'm so scared. I don't know what to do. I had told the father, and he wasn't interested in being a father. I would really pick the good ones. Not that he was.
But I think sometimes you get in that pattern, right? Like you see that quite often. People that are struggling with self-confidence, like you clearly were, you sort of have a pattern of these guys that aren't great. But
Well,
I
I was great. So, honestly, I was attracting where I was. I didn't have a lot of character in my life. Like, I didn't even know who I was. So it's, but I knew when I said that prayer, I felt strength that I needed to place my son for adoption. I knew that was the first strong, hard decision I made. Like up to that point, I was kind of in la la land. All of a sudden, the reality, I was a little older. I had a job as a photographer, and I had 2 children. And when I looked at my kids, I knew my kids deserve better than what I'm giving them. I can't keep doing this. I can't keep taking hostages to my crazy life, So I started looking for a family. I met a wonderful couple. They were so great. I knew when I met them, I met with several attorneys and looked at lots of files. And I felt really strongly when I met this family that they were my son's family. And they came to every doctor appointment, and they were there the day my son was born. And I remember I watched them hold him for the first time. It was really special. But then they walked out of the room, because they do that when they have a baby. And it's their family. And I had prepared for this. I kept imagining this family will take my child home. He's not my child to keep. And I felt empty. Like I didn't understand, trauma. No one talked about therapy or anything. I just thought, well, I got to go back to work. Now, keep in mind, I met Chad a couple of weeks before I gave birth to this child. I remember the first time I met Chad, he walked into my parents' home, and I was like, I wish my life was different, wouldn't it? Chad has these blue eyes and this kindness and goodness in him. And I thought, wouldn't it be amazing if I could have someone like you in my life? I just could feel the difference between where I was and where he was. And I thought, if my life were only different,
Now, why did he come to your house? Why was he there in the first place?
So he had just graduated college at Utah State, and my sister and her boyfriend were at Utah State. And her boyfriend happened to be one of Chad's mission companions. So he was in town, and he came over, and they were going to go do something together, just hang out. So I just opened the door, my parents' door. When he walked in, I sat there and talked to him until they came up. And
you were like 8.5 months pregnant.
I was 8.5 months pregnant. So it wasn't like I was thinking, oh, look at me. It was like, it's nice to meet you. I'll go tell him you're here. But I just remember, I honestly felt such goodness from Chad from the first time I met him, Guarantee he wasn't thinking, oh, well, yeah, here's this cute 8.5-month pregnant girl with 2 little kids. Like, let's go on a date.
Right.
It wasn't really the ideal situation. But what ended up happening was this. After I placed David for adoption, the family that left, I was still at the hospital, and my sister and her boyfriend, my husband now, his mission companion, came over to check on me. And it really touched him. He was emotional about it, even more than my sister. I think my sister's, all my family thinks Portia's strong. She can do anything, right?
But your sister's boyfriend was touched.
he was touched. He was kind of emotional. And he's like, I'm so sorry that you're going through this. And I was like, I'm fine. I can do it. And he goes, well, how can I support you? What could I do that would be nice for you? And I said, you can set me up with your cute friend.
Good for you.
That's the last thing I need, right? But anyway, what ended up happening was that I started to struggle with addiction. I really, my emptiness got deep. And first it was pain pills, then it was street drugs. And I ended up losing my job and my life got a lot worse.
And this was before you and Chad kind of got together.
Yes. And yeah, I came home late one night when I'd been out partying using drugs. And when I walked in the house, my mom was there with my son, my oldest son, who was 8 years old at that point. And when I walked in, she looked at me and she said, Portia, all this little boy cares about is you. How could you do this to him? He's been waiting for you for hours. And I grabbed his hand and walked downstairs. I laid on the floor and I sobbed and I begged God, please take this from me. I can't keep hurting my children. I just need help. And my little boy walked over and he goes, Mom, don't be sad. It's okay, Mom. It's okay. And I said, no, Jace, it's not okay. I'm such an ugly person. He goes, no, Mom, you're beautiful. Come look in the mirror. Come see, Mom. That night, I promised I would go to any length to change my life. And the next morning, I walked upstairs and I said, Dad, I need help. I don't know what to do. Now, my dad was really tired of me because he was sick and tired. I mean, he kind of given up on me, and he should have. Like, he just had tried everything, and he was like, she's going to do what she's going to do, you know? And he goes, I don't know what to tell you, Portia. And I said, I need help, Dad. And he goes, yeah, you're going to have to figure it out. And he goes, if you want to go talk to the bishop, he lives across the street. Like, he basically said, you're on your own, which is the right thing for me at that point. Cause I walked over and knocked on his door and said, I don't know what to do. I'm scared. I'm a drug addict. I'm Cliff's daughter. And he goes, okay, come on in. And he said, I'm going to call a friend. And he called somebody who was in recovery from drug addiction. And he had him come share his story with me. And he said, Portia, I promise you with priesthood, power, and authority that if you pray and you read your scriptures and you go to church, your whole life will change. And I was so desperate for a whole life change that I said, I'll do it. I'll do it. And it was really hard. Honestly, like, I didn't feel comfortable in church. I felt very uncomfortable. And when I read my scriptures, all they said to me was, Portia, you're in big trouble. Like, that's what I could hear, you know? I didn't feel like, and my bishop, who was a really good bishop, said, Portia, you're very selfish. He's like, I want to help you, but you got to take a look at your part in all of this. Cause I kept blaming my parents and my ex-husband and all this stuff. And he's like, Portia, you got to take a look at what your part is. And I'm so grateful for that, because accountability is power. And it was a lesson that I needed, and I would need even more later. I ended up doing what he told me to do, and my whole life changed.
Did you ever do any kind of like drug rehab centers or anything like that?
Nope, I hadn't. Now I've worked at multiple of them, but what I did was I did exactly what he said. I went to 12-step meetings. I went 4 times a week to meetings.
Okay.
And they had the LDS addiction program in AA. I went to those meetings. I shut up and listened because people told me to do that. So I listened because I didn't trust my own thinking anymore. And I went to church and I prayed and I read my scriptures. And it was
So you didn't just, because I think sometimes like people think, oh, if I just read my scriptures and say my prayers, everything will be fine. But you did so much more work. I mean, that those are good things to do, obviously.
There's a lot of power in it. But the thing is, where I was at, I had to go where I felt understood. Like I went to church, but I felt very uncomfortable there. Not that people didn't love me and try to support me, but I needed to go in a room where people talked about their drug addiction and that they were
struggling. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And you're a drug addict. It takes more than just willpower. Like you need tools. And so you got
I needed to see that it was possible. I needed to see that other people were doing it and it could be done. And so when I went to meetings, I saw that people were 1 year sober, 2 years sober. And I'm like, okay, what they say to do, I'll do. If they can do it, I can do it. Like for me, it's always been, I have to observe it. Somebody telling me, oh, this works, but they haven't been through it. That's not going to help. I need to see somebody else has been where I am. Like when I heard the first time some guy who had 2 years sober tell his story, and it made sense to me, everything he said I had done. And I'm like, look at the light he has. If he has it, I can get it. Like whatever he did. I even went up and said, what did you do? I need to do what you did. And he goes, oh, you have to become a good person. That's the recipe. And I was like, I don't know how to do that. And he's like, there's principles to it. And he gave me the book and he said, read this and come to meetings. So I did what people told me to do. And
Now, was this the 12-step program put up by the church, or just a 12-step program that you found?
I went to both. I went to regular AA meetings and I went to church 12-step meetings because I needed both. Like I needed to go both. Yeah.
Well, and it sounds like you are a strong enough personality that when you saw somebody that was doing it, okay, if you can do it, I can do it.
Right. But also I was very weak because of my addiction. Like I'd never been so weak. I am a strong person and I know that about myself, but I had given away all my power through my addiction. That's what was so scary to me. I was like, I made all these promises to myself and I couldn't keep any of them. Like, this isn't me. Like, I'm usually able to do hard things and I can't do this. And so it's actually the submission of recognizing that I can't do it without a higher power, which to me is God. But it was what I thought would be the hardest thing I'd ever have to do to get sober, which it totally wasn't. So don't ever say that.
Yeah.
Don't ever say this.
You just didn't know what was coming.
I had no idea. Well, this helped me so much though, because I knew it was possible to come back from hard things. I'll tell you this though, I've been through enough and I will never relapse. I'll die first. Like, I am not climbing out of those things anymore. I'm tired. Like, I don't have it anymore in me because I got sober. Chad and I ended up getting married. He adopted my kids and we went to the Mount Timpanogos temple and it was beautiful and it was sacred. And at this point, my parents weren't active anymore. So I didn't know a lot about the church, but I was really grateful when they let me walk in that temple. I couldn't believe it. And they gave me garments and I was happy to have them. And I went every week so that I could learn more. And Chad and I bought a little house not far from the temple, Timpanogos temple. And I would go and I felt a lot of good things came into my life. I started my own photography company that grew crazy fast. I had 2 children in elementary school. The coolest part was I was actually being a good mother to them. I was showing up and then I did what I always do. And I had 2 more kids, like 18 months apart. I planned once in my life to have a kid, but we had our first son, and then my business had grown to the point that we had to build a studio. So I started building a house with a studio in it and found out I was pregnant with our daughter. And so they were really close in age. And my company was photographing like 200 weddings a year. I had employees now. So I have a lot to manage. I have a nanny that's helping me. And I ended up.
You had a busy life, but it was full and good.
It was, but there's things about me, like I have to get up every morning, read my scriptures and pray. Like, and I shouldn't say have to, like it's a foundation for me. And I got busy and I started not going to 12-step meetings, not doing the things that were helping me. And then I ended up having a bad injury and I relapsed when I had surgery. I had to have back surgery. And here's the thing I know about myself now, like I can't take one pain pill. It changes me immediately. But then I was thinking, well, I'm not using street drugs and I'm going to church and I've got these kids and I'm okay. And I started using drugs again and I relapsed. And it was really scary because I had been so active in the LDS 12-step program that my stupid pride got in the way. And instead of just going back and saying, hey guys, I relapsed, I need help, I stayed away from the meetings because I was scared. I didn't want to let people down, which is so dumb. But
I think that's pretty normal. I mean, you were embarrassed.
Yeah, but it's not helpful.
It's not helpful, but it is normal, right? Like you see now it's not helpful, but you understand that that's probably pretty normal. When you relapse, you're embarrassed, especially if you're working there and you've been going for so many years. And so,
but looking back now, like
did Chad know that you had relapsed?
Not right away. So we built a new home. I had 2 little ones. I relapsed. I'm trying to run a photography business. When I relapse, I don't just use drugs. I start thinking I got to do more because I'm a goer, So I start thinking, well, I'm working too hard as a photographer. I just need to make enough money to pay off our house. And real estate's booming and all my neighbors are building spec homes and my parents were buying and selling real estate. So I am going to do a couple spec homes, pay off our house, and then I won't have to work so hard as a photographer.
And this is like
2005.
2005?
And I ended up getting involved in some illegal real estate deals, which is by far the short version of that. I mean, I can go into more detail, but that's really what happened. At that point, Chad knew that I was struggling with addiction. And I felt like really what I did is at first I made some money in real estate and then I got in over my head. I really did. Like I had these houses that I was invested in that I had to make these really high payments on to try to make money on. And I had all of our equity tied up in it. And so it was very risky. which is
But it
also,
sounds like from your book, like when I read your book, the first one, that maybe you didn't fully understand all what was going on in the beginning, because there were people involved in that kind of got you into this. Wasn't just, hey,
no,
Portia's taking on more than she can chew. It was more like,
there's
this
a,
sounds like a really good idea, you guys. I will follow you along. And so I feel like you don't need to take all the blame for that. I mean, yes, you had choices and you made choices, especially later on, right?
right.
But you know, I feel like don't beat yourself up because it wasn't all your fault.
Yeah, there were a bunch of us. And I've made peace with it, but
Sure.
I mean, it happened, and looking back on it, like I would never, where I'm at in my life today, I'm a lot more cautious, and I can see so clearly how foolish that was. But at that point in time, you're right. Like I saw it as everyone's involved in this, and I don't want to be left behind. And it felt, I don't know, but my judgment when I use,
But you were naive as well, right?
yeah, I was naive as well, right? And so I got involved, and I started hearing I was under investigation. And I remember
Were
at
you
first,
surprised at that? Like, what?
yeah, yeah, I was. Especially at first, I was like, "What are they talking about?" I didn't know. Like there were so many people involved in this. I'm like, it just felt like they're just against me. They're just being rude, and they're just jealous because there was a couple one realtor in particular that had asked me if I wanted to work with him, and I didn't. And then I started hearing rumors, and I thought he's just saying stuff to be a jerk, like because
Right.
I didn't want to work with him. But there's not really a federal investigation like that. I didn't do anything wrong. Like at first, that was my thing, right? In
Hmm.
fact, I even went and talked to a real estate attorney, and he's like, "You're not that important. I don't even know what you're talking about. There's no federal investigation." And I said, "Okay, great." But then the FBI showed up at my house, and there was a federal investigation.
So
And
you had no idea. They just showed
no,
up.
yeah. And then it just became horrible. Yeah. Things got a lot worse. At this point, financially, we were not doing well. Like the market was beginning to tip. I felt just trying to keep ourselves above water. My husband had quit his job to help with the kids because my life was so overwhelming with both photography and real estate.
Oh, so you were doing photography at the same time still.
Yeah, I was. And then I kind of pulled out of photography, and I'm just doing real estate because it was so much. And then it just felt like the weight of the world was on my shoulders. It was such a difficult time for me. When the FBI showed up, I was terrified. And they basically said, "You need to decide." They said to my husband, "Because she's going to go to prison. And if you stand by her, you'll likely get charged too on a conspiracy." Because I had bought homes in both of our names, which you do when you're married. But because his
Sure.
name was on them, they're like, "If you don't cooperate with us, you'll probably get charged with her." And they really felt bad for him. They didn't really care for me too much, but they felt bad for him because they're like, "Look, this is a good guy. And my life's a mess." Like they know my whole history, and they're like, "Okay, well, it makes sense that she would make some dumb decisions, but this guy probably didn't deserve it." And I just remember feeling so scared and sick that I was going to lose everything, my marriage, financially. I felt the weight of all of that. I remember Chad's dad, my husband, he was so mad. Everybody was, it was just awful, really hard time, really sad time for me and scary. I remember, this is so sad, but like, I was like, if I could just get breast cancer and die. I don't want to
Right.
live like this. I just want some honorable way to leave.
Yeah.
I've never been suicidal, but I was so depressed and so discouraged and so scared. And I remember I had in real estate was like trying to close a deal and made some threats against me. And I called my attorney and I said, "This guy is crazy. He's making threats." And she goes, "Oh, don't worry about that. That's just the real estate game." Most of my clients that die by suicide because they're so discouraged from the process. It usually nobody ever gets hurt from a threat. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, like this is just so bleak." It was such a difficult, hard time. And if I'm being honest, I could not imagine how we were going to survive and how my life could become as beautiful as it is. And I hope that people that listen to this understand there's no place that you can go that's so dark that you can't come back from it, because it was very bleak, very dark.
Was there at any point during that time that you
Oh yeah. I mean, at the first time in the beginning, it was like I felt it. I felt it. And then as things went on, I was too far in. Like I didn't know how to
so
get
in the
out of it.
beginning, what do you mean you felt it? What
Like
do you
that
mean?
spirit that tells you not a good idea. Like
And you
I
just
just
ignored it.
Yeah. Part of that is like my addiction, right? Because
Yeah.
I get very grandiose in my addiction. So it's like I'm going to believe what I want to believe, even though the spirit's telling me not to, So I definitely ignored the warning and just kept going. And then I got in too deep. And I just really felt sorry for myself. I was like, this isn't fair. There's so many people doing worse things and banks are involved. And it didn't matter. My lawyers are like, look, they pick who they pick and you're in the target and you got to deal with it,
So you were quite targeted. So anyone else involved, did any of them end up going to prison or just you?
And that was hard for me because there were banks and appraisers that were all in on it, right? Like this was a conspiracy. There were mortgage brokers that actually helped map out the way to do it. There were other investors that were buying, and I was like, why me? But the
you were
government,
the scapegoat.
yeah, they picked who they picked. And my lawyer's like, that's just what it is. And it won't help you to focus on that. And it didn't. In fact, the government, I planned to go to trial, and my defense was, because they said the banks were victims, and my defense was, the banks aren't victims, they were part of the process. Well, right. The government filed what's called a motion in limine that excluded me to present any evidence that the banks were aware of it. Like I lost my defense. So then I was like, like it just felt very unfair because you're dealing with the federal government. They have a lot of money and they have all the resources,
Yeah, and you have nothing.
I have nothing. So we lost everything, me fighting. And then eventually they did indict Chad after they indicted me. They included him. I felt we lost, like financially, we were just renting a home, someone's basement. We lost our retirement, everything.
How long was the fight from the time that the FBI showed up to the time you went to prison?
They showed up in I heard I was under investigation in 2006. They showed up in 2007 and I went 2007. And then they didn't indict until 2011. And I didn't go to prison until 2015.
Oh my goodness. So almost 9 years of hell.
It was hell. It was the worst part. Like prison, as hard as it was, wasn't harder than that. It got to a point where I thought, there's no way I can put my husband and kids through this anymore. I said, Chad, just leave me. Let's just get divorced. I don't, And it was interesting. I said, he was bitter and mad. Like the fact that I had drug him through all this, he felt like a victim and he kind of was. And he went back to work, but he couldn't really, because once you're indicted, it's really hard to get a job. So he went to work driving a truck, which is nothing. I mean, he had to go get a CDL and just anything he could do to make money. And I remember calling him and he was out of town. And I said, you should.
Because he was a college graduate, right? Like he graduated.
Yeah, he had a great job and now he can't even go back to work, right? And so I said, he did marketing for a bank. Banks aren't going to hire him, right? He's got a mortgage fraud charge against him. So he's like, I'll just go drive a truck. So his whole career, everything was in the can. And I said, Chad, let's just get divorced and you can go on. And he said that whole night, he was really, first of all, he's really, really mad at me. He said, I was really mad. I thought, how could she drag me through all this? And now she just wants to leave me here. And then he said, and then I started praying. And he said, I had the most profound experience. He goes, all of a sudden I could feel how you felt. I could feel exactly how you felt. And he said, and it shook me that you could feel that much weight and that discouraged and that I let you stand alone in that. He goes, I felt so bad that I would allow you to walk through that. And how could I blame you? Because I had no idea how much you were hurting. And he called me and he goes, I will stand by you to the end. I am so sorry. He's like, I love you. And not just that, he goes, we have a beautiful future. I know we do. We will get through this. And what he says now is he never thought it would take as long because that was, that was like in 2013 or 14. And I didn't get home from prison until 2019. So it was a long time. But that experience.
But he had that spiritual confirmation that we'll get through this and our life will be beautiful.
Right.
So he was hanging on to that with everything he had.
Right. And it was the strength I needed because a few years later, I would walk into federal prison and be sentenced to the maximum sentence, which was 7 years in federal prison. The blessing was that they didn't give Chad any time. He got home confinement, so he stayed home with the kids and he was true to his word. He actually pled with the judge that day. He said, please, Your Honor, give her time to say goodbye to our children. She'll need that. He stood by me. The kids will say he put pictures of me all over the house while I was gone. He wrote me. He took my calls and he loved me and believed in me through the whole thing. And I respect him so much for that. Like our marriage is stronger than it ever was. It's eternal, what we've been through. And it's the power of God and the power of our covenants. Now, I was really fortunate because I had been very open with our bishops and stake presidents. And so they were supportive. I got a pretty high sentence for my charge. Like the judge really didn't like the church too much. So it was kind of extreme. And even they basically said, we want you to go to prison and wear your garments. We want your temple worthy. Like I was worthy to go to the temple before I went. I had been very honest about what happened, and they felt like that was the right way to deal with it for me. So I was very blessed. I had that protection.
So you wore your temple garments in
while
prison?
I lived temple worthy every day of that prison sentence. I slept with my Book of Mormon. I was up every morning reading my scriptures, and I fasted every single Sunday. There was a lot of repentance that took place, a lot of heartbreak, a lot of kneeling in prayer and reaching out to the Savior. And it changed me. I became a different person.
Oh, I'm sure.
I came to know who I am and who everyone else is. And we are so much more valuable and important to our Father in heaven and our Savior than anything I could ever comprehend.
Because you do say in your book that you felt the power of your covenants.
I did. Yeah.
So explain that just a little bit.
Yeah. So when we are endowed, we are given power and protection. And I felt it. I was very safe in prison. I think that my view of that experience comes a lot because of that protection. Like a lot of people don't write about prison the way I do, but I didn't. I felt like I was at a girls' camp most of the time. Like I loved these women. I never felt threatened. That was important. And I felt the strength of my marriage. I've never felt closer to Chad than when I was in prison. Our spirits were connected, and
Wow.
we were apart for 5 years.
And in the book, you talk a lot about how there were many women who said, Louder, what's with you? Why do you have a light? What's going on? Like, talk about that a little bit, and then obviously why you think that was the case.
Yeah. So I remember I would have these sweet young girls that would say, Miss Louder, can I come sit by you? I just feel good when I'm with you. Or one girl, she would say, I just want to come eat lunch with you because your prayers are different, because we would pray when we would eat, Or I'd have come girls get me out of my bunk and say, so-and-so is really struggling. Will you go in there and pray with her? And I felt the power and authority of Heavenly Father when I prayed. I did. I felt it. And that's the power of the priesthood that my husband has, that I also have access to. And I remember numerous times that I prayed with authority, like I would pray for angels to surround us, and I felt it. And my testimony has grown in the power of prayer, the power of the priesthood, and the power of my covenants because of that experience. And I remember by the end of my sentence, this one cute girl, I just barely met her. She came in and she said, you're different. I'm going to call you the sunshine girl because you have so much light in you, And that my husband said, he said, the day you walked out of prison, you were all lit up. And I know that that's probably not what people expect from coming out of prison, but that's the power of the atonement of Jesus Christ. He really has changed my very nature, my soul, my physical appearance. Like I go to the MTC every 2 weeks and I speak, and I know I am only who I am because of Jesus Christ, because I wasn't this person before. Right. When I think about myself as a young girl, I see myself almost like a third person. I'm like, you poor sweet girl, you had no idea who you were,
Well, if only you could have talked to her, right? So you teach at the MTC, at the Mission Training Center in Provo?
Yes. Yeah.
And what do you speak about?
Well, I share my story. They have me come share with the new missionaries every 2 weeks.
So that they can truly see the power of the atonement in someone's life. Well, that's awesome. I have some questions. So in your book, there's a lot of really amazing quotes, but I love this one from Stephen R. Covey that said, to touch the soul of another human being is to walk on holy ground. Talk to me about that for a second.
I feel like I got the opportunity to meet people and really come to know who they are. And that's sacred. Like when you connect with somebody that may be so broken, maybe they're covered in tattoos, maybe their life experience has been so painful and harsh, but when you really see them and you're able to touch them that way, it changes both of you. And that's why I love that quote, because I felt like in those moments, I was able to connect and see people who they were eternally, their spirit. And it's different when you feel that.
Yeah.
It elevates them and it elevates you and it builds. I remember looking around and thinking, I was born to be here. This was part of my path. I knew you before I came to earth. What a gift it was that I got to have that time with those women.
You said you had to get over the whole victim mentality before you could move on.
Right. Yeah. It took me a couple of years because I felt like I got the maximum sentence. I was hurting. My children were hurting. It was unfair. And I remember watching a woman get up and take complete ownership of her mistakes and thinking, there's so much power in that. I've got to find a way to free myself because I felt like I was in prison. And I wrote a list of everything I had ever done. And I started reaching out to people and asking for forgiveness. And I remember looking at my children and saying, I am 100% at fault for this. This wasn't the judge. It wasn't the FBI. It was me. And I want you to tell me how I hurt you. And that was hard. It was hard for them and it was hard for me, but that's truth. That's where you start to build something new. And it's changed everything. It really has, to take ownership.
Once you took responsibility and just said, okay,
right. Yeah.
I'm going to be responsible. And
well, if you're responsible for your life, you get to decide your future too. As long as you're a victim to the past, you're waiting for the past to change in order for you to have a good future. And I can't depend on the government to come apologize to me. They're never going to.
No.
So I don't want to give them that kind of power. You know?
I love that. And I think that works in any situation, right?
Yeah.
You take responsibility, it gives you your power back. Right. No matter whether it was the government, if it was someone abusive, it was whatever. Once you can be like, okay.
Decide how to respond to what happens to you and what the ending will be. And that only way you can do that is to take responsibility for your response to what's happening.
Yes, for your response. I mean, I don't mean people need to take responsibility if they've been abused, because that's not a thing.
Yeah, they get to decide how to deal with that. They get
how to deal with it and how to get help and counseling and moving forward. I know, that's fantastic. Now, I read in the book that you had a dream at your 3-year mark.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about that for just a minute and how that kind of helped you?
Yeah, it's interesting because there were so many times at night that I would just reach out to Heavenly Father in prayer because it was my best friend. I felt like I would just lay there in my bunk and for hours and share what was in my heart. But I felt very tired. I had been in prison a long time and I felt tired. And I remember that night, it was a simple prayer. I felt like I was so far away from my family. It felt like prison was my life. I couldn't remember what it was like before prison and I still had a long way to go. And I just said, Heavenly Father, I'm tired. Please help me. And I remember that night, I had this dream. I was in a room and it was a beautiful white room with great big windows. And there was a teacher in the front of the room that was brilliant. And I kept raising my hand, asking questions. I'm like that. I want to know. The teacher kept smiling at me almost just that he knew me. And I remember looking around the room and thinking, I felt like a leader. I'm in charge here. You got to tell us about this and you got to tell us about that. And then the teacher walked by and he whispered in my ear, I'm going to marry you someday. And I remember feeling so much joy. It was eternal joy that I felt. And I woke up right then. And I can't tell you, when you're in prison, that kind of joy you don't get. You get that joy in the temple. I've only had that joy a couple times in my life. And so there I am laying there going, what does it mean? I felt so happy. I would go out in the rec yard and I would just remember over and over that feeling, I'm going to marry you someday. And I even called Chad and said, I don't know what's going on, but I had a dream and this guy, he's going to marry me someday, And one day I'm sitting in the rec yard and I realized that was a dream of the preexistence. And the man was my husband. And I didn't even recognize him because he was so brilliant. And that helped me a lot because I realized we are incredibly brilliant. We do not know how eternally brilliant we are. And when I came home from prison, that dream has helped me. It's not in the book, but I changed a lot while I was in prison. A lot. I worked hard because I'm a worker in whatever direction I'm going, right? And Chad is more a hunker down and take care of things at home. Well, I came home and there were times that I was just I don't even know you and you don't even know me. We're trying to refigure this stuff out. And every single time I looked at him and went, but I do know. I know you eternally. I know who you are eternally. And that no matter what, I look at Chad and I remember who he really is. And I hope people can just imagine. We get lost here on this earth, but we are eternally glorious. We have so much light and goodness in us. I can't wait. I tell Chad, I can't wait to see you on the other side. I already know
how awesome you are. Yeah.
I mean, he's amazing here too, but yeah, that dream has carried me through, not just through prison, but even since. Whenever I have a frustration with my husband, I'm like, I know who you are.
Oh, that's beautiful. So you said in the book, you said there was a mission statement that you used to repeat over and over while you were standing in those really long prison lines, sometimes for hours to get food or whatever. What was the mission statement and where did it come from?
So I wrote it and I still recite it every morning and every night, and I will do my best. Okay. Because I do it a lot in my mind. I live my life with faith, integrity, and purpose and make a positive difference in the lives of others. I love the one and inspire many and communicate the worth and value of others so effectively it enables them to see their own divine potential. I'm going to stop there because I'll get all twisted up, but it's longer than that. And it really just defines what's important to me. My family's my highest priority. My husband's the most important person in my life. I live my life with honor and integrity and purpose. I kind of go through and what was cool was that here I am in prison and I had a clean slate, so to speak. I mean, I got to decide. I'm like, okay, I'm going to build my life based on character. I can see now that's the most important thing. Service, integrity, like all my goals are, I write my goals every morning and they're like, I have honest, open, meaningful relationships with others. I'm a good friend. I'm a good listener. I love and honor my parents. I love and support my husband and believe in his success. Like I have, some of them are commandments, but I really focus on those things because I started to realize like, I get to decide what my future looks like. And I'm going to start right here. And I'm going to make a list of things that matter to me, what my values are. And every morning I have my morning routine. I roll over in the morning, I recite my mission statement, I get up, I read my scriptures, and I write out what my goals are and the things that I want to focus on. And I just, I read a lot and I was very disciplined in what I read and what I studied. And I really did see it as my opportunity to become who I wanted to be. And that's available to any of us at any time, right? Like you can decide what you want to become. And I got this vision in prison, like an amazing ending. If I have an amazing ending, then it's a beautiful story. Like every hard thing that I went through, as long as I have an amazing ending, the story's beautiful. And I want people to know that. Like you might be in the middle of the hard part, but an amazing ending is available to all of us. We can all have that. And I'm living
through Christ, right?
Yes, through Jesus Christ.
And you've got your holy rhythms that keep you strong and connected to God and in the best place you've ever been in your life.
Yeah. I go to the temple every week. I go to homeless shelters and I go to prisons and I go into some hard places. So I stay connected.
You must feel so empowered now, though, when you go in there. You feel empowered that you can share this light with others. Like that's a beautiful, beautiful place to be.
Yeah, I feel strong.
Like 10 years ago, you could not even have imagined where you are now.
There's no way. There's no way I could have seen a life this beautiful. And it just keeps getting better. So
God is so good, isn't he?
So good. Yes.
So good. And so abundant is a word that I keep thinking about, like with your life that was in shambles. And now you are changing other people's lives because of God and his light. Like that's so abundant and beautiful to me. I love it, Portia. Thank you. I have one final question. Why do you think it's important to recognize the hand of God in your life?
Because his power and his love is so grand that the more we see it, the more we have it. Like it's always there. But when we don't recognize it, we aren't allowing it in. And so for me, like, I can't praise him enough. He loves his children, and recognizing it brings more of the same into your life. Like when you see his hand, it isn't easy. There are people I work with that feel let down or they don't understand that they have a loving Heavenly Father. I remember one girl in prison, she goes, I gave up on God a long time ago. And I said, well, it's a good thing he never gave up on you. He doesn't give up on his children. But yeah, for me, I am so grateful for a loving Heavenly Father.
Thank you, Portia. I really appreciate you chatting with me today. Your story is beautiful, and I hope that people can hear in your voice the spirit that you have to share, and I really appreciate it. So thanks so much.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day.
You too.
Thanks for listening. If you have an experience where you have seen the hand of God or your higher power in your life, I want to hear about it. Please send an email to Sheila@beyondcoincidence.com. Have a great day.